In my last video, there were a few people that were upset with the color red on the Sony, saying that out of the box they saw it and it was like a lot more vibrant and things like that. Now, these very well could be people who are just trolling me, but for the sake of argument, and if it's not a troll, I want to explain what you're seeing and why. Remember, I always say at the beginning of every single one of my comparison videos, they are not stock comparisons. I never take TVs out of the box and just say, this is as good as you could ever get out of this TV. That'd be an incredibly ignorant statement to make and very irresponsible. So instead, as somebody who understands how to adjust these TVs, I make sure to optimize them for their peak performance to where it can't get any better and I can't get any better image quality. Then I tell you what the TV is actually capable of. I think that part of TV reviews goes missing a lot, and it's just people just whipping TVs out of the box and saying, oh, I really like this TV. Like, that's not, I mean, yeah, I guess maybe if you're just doing like a general, like you're never gonna touch your TV again kind of thing, but if you even remotely grab for the remote to try to adjust, at some point you're going to want to see better. So my content here is always about making things look better than what it looked out of the box. Just want to throw that out there. Now, I also want to show you guys something that is very important. Right now, the Sony does look better than what it would normally look like out of the box. So out of the box, it's rocking Rec 709. I have it set to DCI P3. Now I'm gonna give you guys an idea of what that actually would mean for you if I were to open up the settings and we're gonna go into video signal and we're gonna go from DCI P3 to Rec 709 where it defaults. You're gonna notice that things get worse, okay? Like the skin tones get worse, the colors overall get worse, it's not better. And so, yeah, on the one hand, it might be disappointing to watch it lose, I suppose, if you have like a horse in the race. It doesn't really matter to regular everyday people. So we're in Rec 709 right now, and this is DCI P3. There is a world of difference in the kind of color that you get, and this is why I use this. Now, again, you can use whatever you want. I'm not here to tell you one way or another, but I am trying to show a better way that could enhance your viewing experience, and that's really it. So now that we know the Sony is in DCI P3, the Samsung has just significantly superior color output. It just does. You can deny it all you want, but it just does, and we are seeing that here in the way that colors are represented. So this image shows the Samsung S95B on probably one of the most saturated versions of red I've ever seen on the Samsung demo, and also for Sony as well. But you'll notice that the hue on the Sony tends to be more towards an orangish color than we'd like it to be. And this is just indicative of Sony having a really big problem with the way that they're, you know, rendering or mapping their colors. So that's why I point this out, because this is very real. You're gonna notice this across the board. If you compare it to a QD Oled, and even some QLEDs, you might even see this, the red on the Sony is going to start falling apart immediately, looking more towards the shade of like a sunburst kind of color, not necessarily a true red. So this has been a gripe on LG OLEDs for a long time, and as we know, Sony is using LG panels. So this is probably one of the older panels, who knows, but it's definitely not C3 or G3 quality as far as the color output, especially on the color red. So blood orange is now on Sony, where LG has figured that out. This is a very important thing to note, because going forward as we review OLEDs, this is something that probably is going to continue to play a factor when we talk about lower NW OLEDs. As you know, more companies start getting access to these kinds of lower end OLED panels, they're going to probably try to do more of the same. So I want to experience this with you by showing you in real time like what actually is happening and what's going on. Now, I want to also point out that the Samsung S95B to the right is showing you more saturated color, but this is just on normal. This is not on the next level, like, oh my God, like crazy settings that I can do. I'm going to show you why it looks so different, and we're going to use a different image just so we mix things up. This is what the Sony looks like when you go into the native color space. So this is going to give you way more realism in terms of color saturation and things like that, and just showing you another image as well so you can see like Sony by comparison is looking orange. The relevancy of this is a Sony specific demo of some sort, so you can kind of see the color not being as ideal on the Sony as we would like it to be. Now the relevancy of this is, again, to point out that everybody again lauds Sony as being this color accurate, wonderful, beautiful, perfect display. But the truth is, when you really compare it and you break this stuff down, going through various color spaces and seeing what it is and is not doing, the Sony has fallen behind. Now again, I'm not here to convince anyone who believes that Sony is the best TV on planet Earth that it's not. Hey, if you believe that, power to you. But what I am here to show you is like cutting through all of the excitement and all of the, you know, fanaticism, if you will. You have a very real situation where the Samsung S95B is just outperforming it in color in a lot of areas, and it is probably in your best interest to go with the Samsung S95B because of that reason. So while it is silly to make a video kind of primarily focusing on the color red and how much more it comes through on the Samsung S95B, it was needed because people are kind of confused and like feeling like, oh, maybe you're lying about this stuff, or like, I don't really see that on my end. You have to compare these things, and you also would have to lock in my settings to see the differences that I'm talking about. I cannot stress enough, if you have not and you own the Samsung S95B, get my settings, dude. Like, you're in for a world of, like, a treat that you wouldn't have imagined otherwise. The same for any TV that I've ever worked on, so definitely try those out because, again, I do not do stock comparisons here. I know it might sound like some cheesy little tagline or maybe sales pitch, but I just don't. Like, it's a fact. And that matters because out of the box, these TVs are never going to come as fully buttoned up as they're supposed to be. They're just not. You're going to get a very basic looking image, and it's up to you to take it further than that. And so that's what I do for you guys for $5 here on this channel. Make sure you join if that's something that you are interested in. But to round out the video, just because it's fun to do this, I'll show you how the Samsung S95B actually outperforms Sony in almost every way imaginable in terms of color. So here we have a picture of the ocean. This is relevant because, again, this comes from a Sony demo, and you can clearly see all of the various shades of green in the Samsung S95B, where the WOLED Sony A80L just is not producing it anywhere near as much. This is an example of the color purple. Now, hopefully this will show you exactly how much more color is being kicked off on the Samsung S95B than the Sony. The Sony just cannot compete at this level, and it is very obvious as we look at both displays. Like, purples just, they fall very flat and very cold, very bluish looking. Again, this is what I was trying to explain in a lot of the videos, but again, I'm going to show you something else now. That phenomenon is also seen with Magenta, so you can clearly see Magenta just looks way better on the Samsung S95B than it does on the Sony. Again, not an accident. This is actually what it looks like, and you're going to experience this across the board. Yellows are going to look way better on the Sony. As you can clearly see, it looks like actual yellow, where Samsung targets more of like a pale, like almost like highlighter yellow green. Greenish yellow, like it's just not pretty. And this is something they've struggled with like literally for well over half a decade. I've been covering it and it never changes. I mean, I guess they're immune to reviews that actually give them feedback that would make their brand better. I don't know. But this is one of the things to point out when we talk about comparatively, you're paying money, what do you prefer, what do you like? If you're watching things with a lot of yellow and you know yellow is one of your favorite colors and you want it to be buttoned up, then maybe you would go for a Sony over a Samsung. And the same thing can be said about the color red when we talk about Samsung maybe being the better choice over a Sony. It really is just tomato, tomato. There is no like one size fits all type thing. We can go through every single color. Greens are going to be more saturated on the Samsung, but more accurate on the Sony overall. And these are just little things that you're going to notice the more you start comparing these TVs and seeing what they can and cannot offer. So hopefully this video explains color a little bit better between these two displays. And as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. And until the next video, I'll see you guys later.